because if you remember, in the month of February, we had done the RPO Conclave. So they were separated because that was done at the request of the Government of India, because the Government of India was having a massive Renewable Investment Summit in the same month. So we had put the RPO obligations issue just before that, last year. That's the background of the story, because we found that there was a violation of the renewable obligations in the country, because most of the states had actually violated and they had not purchased renewable energy. Okay? And the condition precedent which was cited was that one was costly. There are still states like Chhattisgarh who have a lot of coal, so they're saying we're not bothered about carbon deferment. We would continue to have more coal-based power into the system, because they're saying we are surplus. So there's one debate going on the side. Okay, and then there are states which have no sources, and they are upping the ante for renewable energy. The best example is Gujarat and Rajasthan, and now Madhya Pradesh joins in. So I would see these two things will sustain on their own, because there are two ways to look at the whole picture. We are operating the grid, obviously, and we need plug and play. We have discussed this many times. The plug and play will only come from the hydro and the gas, no other source, right? Neither the thermal nor the solar cannot give the plug and play, and the susceptibility of wind will make it at some point of time, because it's not predictable, it's too fluctuating. Even solar is more stable as compared to wind. Solar is damn more stable, it's almost solid state power. So we are seeing flat curves helping the continuous generation, and including nuclear also. But then there are plug and plays which have to come and help in peak shaving, which we have discussed as engineers a long time back. And Germany and all, we keep a spinning reserve, so they come and go, right? In our country, come and go has not happened, because here we almost use all our hydro plants like base load as well as peak loads. We only remove hydro whenever we require. But hydro is capable of upping the ante. But that's also seasonal, but it does a good job. And gas can always come. Gas is the plug and play, which actually takes over from the period when we start generation, when the heavy monsoon results in large generation afterwards of hydro power, and then later on tapers off towards the end of the year. We've seen even our neighboring country, Bhutan, from whom we purchase about 1500 megawatt today, that they have the maximum of this. Me and Hetal have visited continuously this. So we see that always the graph is such that in the immediate month, because they have barely rains 15 days, it's only the glacier melt that actually produces the hydropower. And what happens in that is, in the period after, let's say, March or April, it changes, it is a width between March and May. Because last year I saw that March everything was parched. This year again, there is water, there is snow, it's always doing this. And so maybe April, it starts flowing, all the water bodies. So they start generating from this period to the next. And then by December or Jan, they have absolutely very low hydro generation. So at this point, Bhutan is no consumer with 7 lakh population, right? It is needing roughly about 300 megawatt. And the balance, they literally sell to India. So at this point, they're selling roughly 1450 megawatt to 1500 megawatt to India. And they have given me a, data where they feel they can consume 500 by 2017. And by that time, they should have on the grid about 4,000 megawatt. And the interesting part why I mentioned this country is the economics of that whole thing. What's happening is that today 12% of GDP of Bhutan is moved by India's payment of electricity. We pay 1 rupee 98 paisa as a tariff, okay, to them, which is the cheapest tariff, because no state in India gives us that kind of leverage now. The second thing is that when they go to the 4,000 megawatt 2017, 18, let us look at 18 as the timeline, when they sell all that, almost 25% of their GDP, between 22 to 25% GDP of Bhutan will be fueled by India's payment of electricity. So I see this as a very geopolitical model, because after Modi ji recently, that went unnoticed because of the JNU stuff, because it's very unfortunate. But the 400 kV line transmission system was inaugurated. And I will remind you, as a very young guy, I wrote in Indian Express an article on saying the South Asian regional grid. I called it SARG. So it is becoming a reality, because with Nepal and then Bangladesh buying some power from us, we will see all this coming in. So I feel, there's a lot of opportunity between our neighboring countries. We at least have the South Asian economies doing this, So today's day is very important, because we are encouraging 11 states today. That is the day. And we are also discussing whether we have a commitment. While I will say coal will remain a mainstay, no doubt about it. For the next 25 years, we'll have to look at it. But that ratio is, changing, So that ratio change has to be analyzed. Today, we will have that discussion why we are encouraging the states for renewables, Today is the renewable day, which includes the entire portfolio, including nuclear, minus the coal portfolio. Even gas, I would say, would slowly come as a part renewable because the emission characteristics of gas-based power is extremely, I would say, lower than what you see. Because I see gas and solar as hybrids in the future. Just like hydro and solar are hybrids. Like Haryana tells me they want to put hydro solar as hybrid. Yesterday I had a meeting at the happening Haryana summit, and our IS officer of the state who's done excellent work will be joining us, Ankur Gupta ji. So in that it was clearly mentioned to me that they want the hydro and solar as hybrids. So Haryana does have possibility of using small canal head power, So that's a new area, and if they can integrate this, mega power can be generated. So new thinking is emerging in each phase, Every state will have to find its own solution. It can't be that it can be retrofitted, but unique solutions for each state. And then the grid has to be managed, a very large country, and definitely democratic on the grid, okay? If not in anything else, Our friends are saying, I cannot understand people who say, oh, India में intolerance है, ये वो एक अलग discussion चल रही है, ठीक है? उसको छोड़ दीजिए. लेकिन this country में बड़ी tolerance है grid में, और खाली हम अगर open access को, अब सभी राज्यों को, regulators have a major role in this, I feel, and we had the regulator, one of the finest regulators we had, VP Raja with us. Please give him a big hand that he has made his presence from Maharashtra. So, without further wasting time, I would like Raja Sahab to please come over. VP Raja, former chairman of the Maharashtra Electricity Regulatory Commission, one of the finest regulators we had, and also the former joint secretary of the Atomic Energy Commission. Please once again give him a big hand. We have Dr. Hridesh Khanna, who has come all the way from Germany, my very good friend, and a man who has seen energy sector for many, many years, now 3 decades. Dr. Khanna has seen everything, gas and renewables, and it's interesting that he drives his home in Ingersdorf in Germany with renewable energy solar, which he puts into the grid. Please welcome Dr. Hridesh Khanna. So he's our Renewable Energy Promotion Association Associate DG for European Union, and he also is the chairman of Ikrato Solargy, and this company has just now signed up with the state of Haryana for 8,500 crores of projects, 1,000 megawatt of solar PV, and about 250 megawatt of solar thermal. So that will be the largest solar thermal project if it comes up. My friend Ashwini Dhar is here. Wonderful to have him. Let me also therefore call for the time being Prakhyat. Please come. He will have to keep the seat warming till our MP comes in, but he's been there in our seminars now. Prakhyat is on the board of our publications. He's also on the board of our television venture, which we want in the future. We have a YouTube entity called Entra TV. So Mr. Prakash Sharma is the director on the board of the company. Please give him a big hand. I would request Hetal Mehta, my dear colleague, to please come over. He is my joint president for Renewable Energy Promotion Association. We are the ones who founded it in 2011. And he's also, for me, a man who helped me in designing that report, which resulted in Modi Saab's 100 gigawatt solar by 2022, because we had minimum set 50 gigawatt to 60. Of course, I lost another colleague of mine, a brother, Prakash Iyer. We all did that report. So please give him a big hand for that. So we have Timo Grigoso, he will be joining us. He's come all the way from Germany. He's director of IFB Bamberg, a German company which is involved in gas and renewables and into investments, and they are looking at India, also real estate, They're looking, there's a combination now, real estate is getting linked to everything else. We have Dr. V.K. Garg, sir, straight away walk to the dais, sir, wonderful. Former chairman of the PSC and also a regulator. So we have two wonderful regulators on the dais today. So I would request our dignitaries on the dais to please come and help in lighting of the lamp. Can we have the lighting of the lamp ceremony, please? And I must also recognize the presence of dignitary A.B. Agarwal. Please give him a big hand, a man who chaired Bhakra Bia's management board, and a wonderful man. And if you see, our hydro has succeeded because of people like him. And we also have Mr. T.C. Arora, who has been from the beginning since I started publishing with us. And Arora Saab is another dignitary who has led Toshiba for about 3 decades. Please give him a big hand. TC Roda. Ashwinidhar, where are you? Ashwinidhar, another old friend of mine. Please come, please come. Ashwinidhar. And I would also recognize one of my alumnus, Kapil Saab, who has come all the way from Thana. Please, he's our batch of 66. So please give him a big hand from the NIT Kurukshetra. Only give one single figure and quickly start. The figures today is we have about 288 to 289 gigawatt of installed capacity. Renewables have roughly reached a level of 13.5% of that. Okay, and hydro is at 15%, 14.8 to be precise, at 43 gigawatt. And the coal is still at 175 gigawatt. So predominantly 60% is coal. That's the mix today when we are discussing here, right? So, but yes, if you put the hydro, also about 6 gigawatt of 2.5, 3% of nuclear, then I would say 15 plus 3, 18 plus 13.5, right? So about 32% odd, we are renewable energy, at this point of time, if you look at that whole thing, right? So I don't think it's a bad case, when you look at the whole global mapping of renewable energy. So renewables have really balanced because it has to equate itself. So I would say 50% should come from here and coal should come down to 50%. Then the grid would operate very phenomenally. In that, the role of hydro and gas is very critical. For how much of that hydro and gas will come in, because we need to keep the grid stable. So we'll see. With this, I would like two people to talk here immediately, and both of them have been regulators. One is Dr. V.P. Raja, and surely Dr. V.K. Garg. So I thought we'll begin with them, and I would request, sir, we have lack of time for sure. So we should give the opportunity before it happens in the next 35 minutes to all. So I would like to give about 5 to 10 minutes to both of you. I keep it open. Raja Saab starts first. V.P. Raja, what he feels. Today is the day where we are promoting renewable energy, as I told you. First, V.P. Raja, please give him a big hand.
Thank you, Professor Iyer, and distinguished dignitaries on the dais and friends. Yes, this is the time for renewables, and formal commitments have been made by the government, as after the present Prime Minister took over, he has enhanced the target and said 175 gigawatts of renewables by 2022. And climate change has been a focus of attention globally speaking, and for many years there was this issue of a different way of thinking of developed countries and developing countries. For a number of years, obviously, our pros used to be that you must compare countries in terms of per capita emission of carbon dioxide rather than absolute emission. And obviously, per capita emission wise, India is not a very big emitter. But since this kind of seesaw was going on for a number of years, prior to the Paris conference, which was held early in December, through backroom work, a very important concept was accepted, and that is differentiated targets and differentiated responsibilities. We don't have to put all countries and say that you must achieve this. Let every country indicate in what way they can contribute to reduction of carbon dioxide, that is, reduce the carbon footprint. So the so-called INDCs, intended nationally determined contribution. I think over 170 countries had submitted this to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, including India. And all these documents are available in the public domain. So if you just do a Google search, INDC of India, you will get that full 38 or 39 page document. So in that document, as far as India is concerned, the commitment we have made is one major issue is renewables, that we will do. In the INDC, it has been stated that 40% of the energy mix will be from renewables by 2030. Domestically, the target given is 175 gigawatts of renewables by 2022. In the UN document, we have said 40% of the total energy mix will be from renewables by 2030. So that's one big focus. Yes, second big focus is energy efficiency. Whatever the Bureau of Energy Efficiency has been engaged in, LED bulbs, street lighting using LED bulbs, and some of the major programs which have been taken by the Government of India, one tries to marry this. For example, in the smart cities, there will also be LED street lighting. So that will all reduce the amount of energy that is required. That is the second big focus in India's INDC. And third is the good old afforestation. In spite of, it amuses me, science has done so much of progress, yet as of now, we have not been able to find an artificial viable method of converting carbon dioxide to oxygen. The only method known is photosynthesis, what the plants do. In the presence of sunshine, they are able to take carbon dioxide and release oxygen. Of course, there have been things like carbon sequestration, etc., which in the long run, I myself not terribly impressed by that. And that is, you capture all that carbon dioxide, put it in high pressure in cylinders, then dump it in the bottom of the ocean, but it's still there. So that's similar to the way you store high radioactive waste in lead canisters. So afforestation continues to be important because I think all of us have seen climate change. The entire causation is still not fully understood, but there is a consensus that by the villain of the piece is carbon dioxide. And renewables is the answer to it. As Professor Iyer mentioned, we can't do away with coal. I see in the previous government had appointed a committee under the then member of the Planning Commission, Mr. Kirit Parekh, Kamsal. And they had given a report making predictions till the year 2032. And the present government asked Mr. Kirit Parekh to once again fine-tune it so that the amount of carbon-based or carbon dioxide-based energy is brought down. And in a new calculation, he has now brought it down by about 3% or so. And even though in the narrative we don't use the word carbon tax, But I'm sure all of you are aware that in the budget which has just been presented to Parliament, from 200 rupees, it has been enhanced to 400 rupees. That is, for every ton of coal mined, 400 rupees has to be deposited. So that's a kind of carbon tax. So even though we are not using the word carbon tax, in actual effect, we started with 50 rupees a few years ago. 50 became 100, 150, 200, and in the current budget presented to Parliament 2 weeks ago, 200 has become 400. So 400 rupees to be deposited, which will eventually be used for renewable work, is a kind of a carbon tax. Of course, that will increase tariffs. There's already a concern. Because on the one hand, tariffs will increase, and this so-called grid parity between some of the renewables, particularly wind, solar, etc., with thermal power, is not too far away. Professor Iyer mentioned, and I also believe, partly because I'm convinced about it, and perhaps I got convinced about it because I spent 8 years in the Department of Atomic Energy, that the country should not ignore nuclear. Because renewables, in the short run, may not give us the kind of megawatts that we want. When we first started with wind, the wind turbines had a capacity factor of roughly 16% or so. Now, the design capacities they claim are double that, 32%. In actual fact, it may be 25, 26, 22, 23%. Another word of caution, since I am speaking to a number of people interested in renewables, and we have to take extreme care of quality control. That is solar PVs. Now those panels are literally available by the weight. And in every project, if quality control is not strictly taken care of right at the beginning, this can lead to backlash. For example, I am aware the government of Maharashtra has announced that for agricultural pumping, let every agriculturalist have 2 or 4 solar panels. Good idea. But when you try to do something in a short time and become target oriented, there is always a possibility of compromising on quality. Then what happens is, after 2 years it doesn't work, and then people lose trust. There is this very traditional thing called metering. One of the problems in our country is that not all electricity is metered. Unmetered supply is still given. The Electricity Act 2003 stated that everything should be metered and all future connections has to be metered. Some years ago, Maharashtra took a campaign. In Maharashtra, there are 38 lakh agricultural pump sets. And out of those 38 lakh agricultural pump sets, about 16 lakh are not metered. It's based on a flat rate, based on the horsepower of the engine. It's a different fact. The horsepower is normally shown as 3 megawatts, 3 horsepower to the MSEDCL, to the distribution company, while actually it may be 8, 9, 10 horsepower. That's one problem. But the greater problem is, coming back to metering, when this campaign was taken, okay, meter sab lag gaya, particularly in areas like Kolhapur and Satara, etc. But after about a year, many of the farmers, headed by some political leaders, went in a procession. They removed all the meters, went in a procession and deposited it in the nearest police station. And the gentleman who organized this was a very extremely respected politician of Maharashtra. I can even mention his name, Mr. N.D. Patil. He now must be 87, 88 years old. But I have seen it work since I used to be collector at Satara. And so once I asked him, why did you do this? After all, it's a backlash. When he had come to meet me and only the two of us were chatting, then he gave me something which I had not known. They said after these meters were installed, even after a year, farmers were getting bills which had nothing to do with the meter reading. It was just some ad hoc bills. So the entire billing arrangement had not kind of gelled with the fact that now the moment the meter is installed, your old method of bills should be stopped. And it's very difficult for a meter reader to go to a village and go to exactly where the pump is and read it, etc. So what used to happen is that you just sit in the Maruti Mandir in the village and look at the past and just put some figures in it. So there were farmers who had not even used, but they're getting bills. Because the project of installation of meters does not really get linked up with, well, there's a billing thing, and when you receive a bill, that is what is important for the farmer. I can keep on narrating this, but Professor Iyer has put a time limit on that. The point I'm trying to make is, in all technologies, there is a technology-human interface. And that technology-human interface must be taken care of. For example, there was a mission called the Rajiv Gandhi Drinking Water Mission, a very noble mission, taken around, I think, 1985, 86. Noble mission, and there the priority was given for providing drinking water to villages where the drinking water had a quality problem. That is excess iron, excess arsenic, excessively salty. All these are called quality, and even a complete census of villages which have this quality problem was made. Many organizations were involved. Technology was developed, handed over. For example, technology was developed in BRC and handed over to Thermax. So in Maharashtra, in Vidarbha, there are a number of such villages, quality problem villages. So with the Thermax installed those machines and also looked after it, did hand-holding for about a year or two. But the moment they left, within another year, none of those will function. The actual reason was you used some membranes, and those membranes need to be replaced once in 3 years or so. And the Gram Panchayat did not have the money for that. Similarly, some simple maintenance is required. Same thing will be applicable for solar. There is a certain amount of maintenance that is required. Keeping it dust-free, keeping it clean. If these are not taken care of, this backlash can occur. But I call this as not dealing with the problem of the technology-human interface. And I think with this, I will finish my whatever initial observations I wanted to make. Thank you.
I agree with Rajiv Saab because these are initial observations, because we have a management of time issue today. So I'm asking everyone to keep a 5-minute. So without wasting any more time, but one comment, Rajiv Saab. And that is, I was at PDPU on the invitation of none other than Dr. D.J. Pandian, who's been handpicked by the Honorable Prime Minister to head the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank in China. It is, we must congratulate the Prime Minister on this, because this position was supposed to be given to the Germans, and luckily the Prime Minister called Merkel and ensured that the India chair happens. Otherwise, we would be having a PRO from our side. So that position was swept. So give a big hand to that negotiation. So these things don't come in the forefront. I'm very sorry, this is not discussed. Merkel is a strong lady, We have our German friends here. So in front of them, I'm saying that Merkel was convinced by the Honorable Prime Minister Modi that India needs the chair at this point of time for investments at the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. If you know this geopolitics, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank is an alliance of 51 countries in comparison to the BRICS Bank, which is an alliance of only 5 countries. And in the BRICS, the B is breaking. So it will be RICS. That is how we spell in India RISK. But it's very funny. It is RICS, RICS, right? B will go. So be careful, okay? So India is making the right moves. I'm saying nothing is wrong with this country, okay? All that is talked about, I feel, if anybody has the time, go and see what Anupam Kher said. We were watching that and we were so proud of it. If you can watch that video, it is the video every Indian will feel at heart what is happening. Because I studied at the Kurukshetra University. I'm so proud that my university, I'm sorry, in Delhi people don't like it, is better than the JNU. Okay, more intellectual and is capable of stopping any duress from the state governments or the governments of the day. And it still remains that. In our times it was not possible, and in his time definitely not possible. Surely. So I will tell you, so for God's sake, don't tell me that only Delhi has great universities. The Mumbai universities, the other universities are also there, and they're competing with you. And there are intellectuals who can do wonders. I have nothing against JNU, but I feel JNU must think again what it is doing. Otherwise it will close down. They will be writing their own obituary if they do this constantly. So with that, I want to now go to V.K. Garg. Dr. V.K. Garg, one of our, I would say, favorite seniors and a person who knows the sector like the back of his palm. So what is it in it for us in renewable energy? Like Raja Sahab said, he's just used nuclear and said other renewable energy, but I said nuclear is renewable energy. There is no carbon emission in it. So that's our position. It's in my book. Iyer, Garg Sahab. Please give a big hand.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Mr. Raja narrated one experience in Rajasthan. I came across in one of the discoms another experience. There are farmers who are connected. They get a fixed load bill. And there are times when the rain is delayed or no rain, they draw the power. There are times when there is good rain and they don't draw the power and still get the bill, and they gladly pay it, and the DISCOM finds the AT&C loss figure for that area has come down. that is another extreme. Coming back to the renewables. Renewables pose two problems. One is stability, absorption in the grid, and second is the frequency. When I looked at carefully this word frequency, I found there are two things hidden in it. One is the frequency, other is the currency. Right? And the two are so closely interconnected that they decide the whole interface and the whole fate of the renewable and its acceptance on a commercial scale. Because the grid operator is always scared that it cannot absorb more than plus minus 15% in the grid. And the grid stability, and again it comes to the frequency. I said here frequency is very important. On 10 days during the last 1 year, the country had the same frequency across, because today the country operates in the AC grid mode and on a single frequency. So this flat frequency, when I talk to a generator, he says if the frequency is flat and same all over, where is the incentive for me to increase my generation? Because if the frequency is not flexible and volatile, where is the differential in the pricing? Who is going to pay for me? What is the incentive for me to ramp up my generation? And it is the concern of both hydro, gas, as well as thermal. Because if the frequency is flat, thermal also has to back down. Now, this analysis has its own conclusions, and it says the former concept of a uniform frequency and the same tariff across the country doesn't offer flexibility. Since it doesn't offer flexibility, it is detrimental and does not send any price signal to the market. It does not create market. If it does not create market, there is no price signal. If there is no price signal, there is no investment. There is no innovation. Because the market responds. we have seen the state, we have seen the DISCOMs, and ultimately it is the price signal, it is the market and the price signal thrown by the market which tackles, solves and settles all the problems, financial, operational, everybody adjusts when it comes to in terms of money. So this is my analysis of the renewable, its frequency. I find everybody talking from the front end, generation, share of hydro, share of nuclear, share of thermal. Thermal share, though it is around 66% in India, 65, 66, it is not a very worse off situation because even United States today is at 49%. They may lecture to the rest of the world that the coal is a dirty word and coal is not good. It emits too much of CO2 and the SOx, NOx and whatnot. But their own generation is 49% based on coal. We are at 65, so we are not too much of the mark. And with the growth that we are having and the energy efficiency that we are having, we are reducing the per capita carbon footprint per unit of GDP in terms of purchase parity of rupee and dollar. Now, looking at this, we feel that next 25 years, we still will have the dominance of coal if we have to have Make in India, if we have to increase our industrial production, our exports, reduce our imports, then we have to look at this. And when I look at the whole thing, I find there is a need to look back from the consumer's end, because it is a consumer who converts the current into currency. Everybody looks at it from the generation point of view, because generation is visible. There is a big project coming up. There is a capacity which makes the headlines. But the ultimate point where the current is converted into currency, where the point on which the entire health of the power sector and the balance of the economy depends, is the last mile connectivity at the consumer end. And least attention is at that end. That is, the minimum investment has taken place at the back end, at the consumer's end, at the last mile connectivity to improve the infrastructure, distribution infrastructure. Metering is an issue, and which I think will remain an issue for the next half a decade, if not more. Last 5 years, I have been finding regulators, one after the other, have been issuing orders. There should be 100% metering. And the DISCOMs come with, sir, we have to replace so many lakh meters. And there is no supplier who can supply that quantum. There is no bunch of suppliers who can give that quantity in that period. So they give an affidavit, then they again come for extension, and they again come for extension. And there is hardly any state which can claim that they have 100% metering. On paper, yes, they would have complied, because of a detailed analysis of 2 or 3 states, I found the number of defective meters installed, but not functioning, running into about 1.5 to 2 lakhs. Therefore, the remedy or the need for making renewables a success, apart from the quality, technical issues, grid issues, and other issues, there is a need to look at the last mile infrastructure at the consumer's end. The renewables, quite vulnerable, will face the first burnt of the process if the consumer end is not handled. Somebody a few days back talked of the storage. I said, yes, very good. Storage technology is good and we need it. That will stabilize the solar. for at best 2 years, 3 years. What is the life of a storage battery? Now for nuclear and for offshore oil establishments, the platforms, the cost of dismantling is almost the same as the cost of installation. So when we use these storage batteries, we are going to come across a situation where the environmental threat posed by the destruction of these batteries or recycling of these batteries will be as expensive and threatening as it is for the nuclear and urban installations. So the important aspect which I found that is missing, and Mr. Agrawal has been pointing out repeatedly, the solution lies in using the hydro and the pump storage as a solution for peaking. Unfortunately, all over South, hydro is being used as base load, whereas the hydro that we have is almost about 40,000 megawatt. I may not be precise to 2 decimal levels. And the country's capacity of the grid to move the power from one corner to other corner of the country is 55,000 megawatt. So if this 40,000 megawatt is used judiciously as a peaking power, it can solve the problem of peaking shortages across the country and make the renewables, especially the wind and solar, much more stable, acceptable, and price compatible. Another important of the renewables is when the first Junrum, phase 1 and batch 1 was introduced, the tariff came something like, Rajesh, around 14 rupees a unit. 17, 18 was only very few, but quite a few capacity came at 14 rupees. Now, when this was done, the government has assured a viability gap funding, that the DISCOM will pay only 4.5 rupees, and the balance will come from the viability gap funding. Rightly or wrongly, maybe I have overlooked. I have seen the budgets for last 5 years, and I virtually found the provision for viability gap funding for solar is only marginal. Marginal. I would not say, because they give some budget to MNRE, which partly can be used for funding, partly can be used for domestic subsidy. But the budget is low looking at the target, and whatever low it is, it has 3 components in it. One doesn't know how much is for which component, how the ministry decides. Because there are no guidelines, there are no principles on how it will be decided. This has created another problem. And next problem is when there is an RPO, there is an RGO, the RPO fixed by the regulator, and when the DISCOM comes for the approval of its tariff, it gives the ARR, and in that ARR, it gives the expenditure it will incur on the purchase of renewable. And when next year the ARR come, it has been found that there is no purchase or there is no expenditure on the purchase of renewables, with the net result that the money which was meant for purchase of renewable has been spent on the conventional power purchase. And when you add up for all the DISCOMs all over the country, the amount runs into a mind-boggling figure. Of course, now they are enforcing it in a little strict manner. So maybe next 2 or 3 years we see that those who have invested in the renewables, they get paid, and the sector starts moving towards the increasing pace which has been declining during the year 2015 as compared to 13-14. During the first 3 months of 2016, the renewables is on a downward curve. So there is a need to sustain the growth and check the decline and make sure that the share of renewables in the total energy mix is sustained and is supported by using the hydro as peaking, reviving the non-operative pump storage units to meet the peaking, and create number of new pump storage facilities which can stabilize the renewable and maintain the grid stability. Thank you, gentlemen.